Marisol Thompson stepped out of her car and looked up at the tall glass building of Ardent Global. The early morning sky was soft and gray, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh rain. Marisol had always felt a thrill when she arrived. Here she had worked at this company for 10 years, rising from her first job as an analyst to become senior vice president. She had steered major projects and earned respect, yet today felt different. Today, everything had changed in just 10 minutes. Maisel smoothed her dark suit jacket and walked through the revolving doors. She smiled at the receptionist, a young woman who greeted everyone by name. The lobby was quiet, lit by the pale glow of wall lights and the silver sheen of polished floors. Marble columns rose to a high ceiling, and a long row of leather chairs sat empty. It was calm, but in her chest, Marisol felt a flutter of worry. She passed the security desk where a guard scanned her badge. He offered a polite nod and wished her a good morning. She said good morning back, though her voice trembled just a little. Then she turned the corner and saw the board chair, Mr. Delaney, standing by the elevators. He wore a crisp suit, and his silver hair was neatly combed. His face was solemn. Mara slowed, her mind racing. Yesterday, she had spoken up at the board meeting. She had asked for more women at the top and for fair pay across all levels. She wanted Ardent Global to reflect its employees and the world outside. In the boardroom, she had pointed out gaps in leadership, naming names and waving charts. Some board members had applauded, others had glowered. Mr. Delaney said nothing then, but his eyes had darkened. Now, in this quiet hallway, he was alone. The elevator doors were open, and he waited without moving. As Marisol approached, her steps felt loud on the marble. She squared her shoulders and tried to lift her chin. She had been through hard times before. "She can handle this, Marisol," Mr. Delaney said. His voice was calm but firm. "Could you step into my office for a moment?" She hesitated. Something in his tone warned her, yet she had no choice. "Of course," she said. Him passed the elevators to a plain wooden door, small plaque red board chair. He opened it and gestured inside. The office was large but empty of personal items, no family photos, no awards. A shiny desk sat facing a window that looked out over the city. Mr. Delaney closed the door behind them. "Please sit," he said, pointing to a single chair. She sat. He remained standing. She noticed his hands were behind his back, fingers laced. "I appreciate your dedication to Ardent Global," he began. "Your work has been valuable." Marisol nodded, hopeful he would speak kindly. Instead, he took a breath. "However," he said, "your recent remarks to the board were unwise. They created tension. Some members feel you overstepped your role." His expression was unreadable. "Therefore, the board has decided to reassign you to a new position, one that better fits your current capabilities." Marisol's heart dropped. "A new position," she repeated. "What do you mean?" He laid out the details. Starting today, she would no longer be Senior Vice President of Strategy. Instead, she would serve as Office Support Coordinator. She would report to the Head of Facilities Management and assist with tasks such as maintaining the office environment, helping with supplies, and serving coffee. Marisol blinked. She felt a wave of disbelief. "Serve coffee," she said softly. "Mr. Delaney, I'm a 38-year-old executive. I hold advanced business degrees. I have led multi-million-dollar projects. You cannot expect me to serve coffee." He nodded, as if he agreed. "I know it seems a downgrade, but this assignment will last until the board decides otherwise. You will wear the uniform, follow all guidelines, and complete the duties. You begin today at 9:30 a.m. She looked at the clock on the wall. It was 8:25. She had barely an hour to prepare. The uniform? She had no idea what that meant. "Am I to wear an apron?" she asked, though her voice shook. He did not smile. "You will receive the guidelines from HR. They will provide your uniform. Please report to the facilities office in the basement by 9:30. Marisol swallowed hard. She had worked so hard to break barriers, to climb the ladder, and now they wanted her to push a coffee cart. She closed her eyes for a moment and took a steadying breath. Then she opened her eyes and spoke in a calm voice. Understood. She said she stood, and he opened the door. Thank you for your cooperation. Walking back to her own office, Marisol felt numb. She passed coworkers in the hallway. Some greeted her with sympathetic nods. Others looked surprised. She forced a polite smile but kept her gaze ahead. She needed to think clearly. She reached the elevator and pressed for the 15th floor. The doors shut, and she pressed her back against the cool metal. A trickle of tears slipped down her cheek, and she brushed it away. It's not here, not now. She collected herself as the elevator climbed. On her floor, she stepped out and passed her assistant's cubicle. Sarah looked up, concerned. Marisol, are you okay?
Ash,
She whispered. Marisol managed a small nod. Just changed roles, she said quietly. I'll fill you in later. Sarah's eyes widened, but she said nothing. Marisol walked past and found her office. She stopped by the door and took a deep breath. Her suit hung on a hook. Her desk was neat. She had everything. She needed to be great here. But now she had 10 minutes to get ready for coffee duty. She locked her office door and set her phone to silent. In her drawer was a small envelope labeled Emergency Plan. She pulled it out. Inside a USB stick and a note. The note said, Step 1, collect evidence. She slipped the envelope into her purse. She had prepared for a setback like this. She had anticipated pushback because she spoke up. She had fought for fairness before, and she had always won. This would be no different. She walked to the bathroom and splashed cool water on her face. She looked at herself in the mirror, brown eyes steady, jaw set. She whispered, You've got this. Next, she found her purse and placed inside her phone, keys, and the envelope. She walked to the elevator again, pressing the button for the basement. As the doors closed, she thought about the coffee cart. She did not know how big it was or how many trays it held, but she did know that coffee orders traveled across hallways and departments. In every office, people gathered around the coffee machine. For the next steps of her plan, she would use that. She would turn this demotion into her advantage. Would gather information, piece by piece, and reveal what the board wanted hidden. She would not let them push her aside. The elevator chimed on the ground floor, and she stepped out into the basement corridor. The lights were fluorescent and slightly flickering. Sound of machinery hummed behind a metal door. She followed the signs that pointed to facilities. She reached a plain door marked Human Resources uniforms. She knocked softly. A tall HR manager opened the door. He looked surprised to see her. Miss Thompson, he said carefully. We sent a message, yes? Marisol said, interrupting gently. I need the uniform kit. He led her inside. Racks of neatly folded shirts, aprons, and name tags lined the wall. A small coffee trolley sat in the corner, gleaming. He handed her a folded gray apron with a company logo and a name badge that read Marisol T, Office Support. She took them and nodded. She tried on the apron, adjusting the straps. It looked odd over her suit, but she did not flinch. She clipped the badge to the apron pocket. Then she turned to him. Thank you, she said. I'll begin duty in 5 minutes. He blinked, then offered a worried smile. All right, good luck. As she stepped out into the corridor, apron set and badge clipped, she felt a shift inside her. 10 minutes ago, she had faced a blow. Now she faced an opportunity. She pressed her hand to her purse, feeling the USB stick. She would collect evidence, piece together the board's secrets, and share them with the right people. She would climb back up, stronger than before. She wheeled the coffee cart toward the stairs and paused. She breathed in the air, steady and calm. She whispered to herself, Game on. Then she carried the cart up toward the offices of Ardent Global, ready to turn her coffee duty into her greatest triumph. Marisol felt a strange thrill as she wheeled the coffee cart through the quiet halls of Ardent Global. Her heart beat fast, but her steps were steady. She had 10 minutes until her first official coffee delivery, and she had a secret plan, too. Put into motion, the cart shone under the overhead lights. On its top shelf sat a row of white ceramic mugs. Each mug held a fresh pour of hot coffee, aromatic and steaming. The second shelf were sugar packets, stirring sticks, and small plates of cookies. Underneath was a hidden compartment where Marisol had placed her special cargo, a slim USB drive inside an envelope marked confidential. No one would suspect that beneath the innocent coffee service lay the key to exposing the boards. Hidden deals. She checked her reflection on a glossy elevator wall. The gray apron with the Ardent logo was neatly tied, and the name tag rested on her chest. She looked every bit the loyal office support coordinator, yet behind her calm eyes lay determination. She would use this role to make the company better and to reclaim her rightful place. The elevator doors opened on the 12th floor. This level housed most of the senior executives, including the CEO and finance head. Polished wooden sign read, "Executive Suites." Marisol took a deep breath and pushed the cart forward. The carpet muffled her wheels. She passed a water cooler, where two managers chatted. They glanced up at her uniform and nodded politely. She smiled warmly, then moved on. Her first stop was the office of Mr. Nguyen, the head of marketing. He had supported her diversity proposal in the boardroom. She wanted him to know there was a friend on her side. She paused outside his glass door and called softly, "Mr. Nguyen, coffee delivery for you." When he invited her in, she wheeled the cart inside. The office smelled of fresh flowers from a vase on his desk. A large window looked out over the city skyline. "Thank you, Marisol," he said, his eyes bright. He smiled and accepted a mug. She handed him a cookie. Then she slid the envelope with the USB drive beneath the coffee mug on his desk. It looked like a stray sugar packet. He did not notice. "Enjoy," she said. He sipped his coffee. "I will. This is just what I needed." He paused. "Dud, by the way, I got your email about the diversity plan. I'll help champion it." Marisol felt a warm glow. He would be her first ally. She nodded and left quietly, closing the door behind her. On to the next stop. Down the hall, she found Ms. Patel, the head of human resources. Ms. Patel had always been professional and fair. She had advocated for better employee benefits. Marisol knew Ms. Patel had access to attendance records and company surveys. Any hidden notes about board influence might be found there? "Good morning, Ms. Patel," Marisol said, stepping into her office. The space was bright, with motivational posters on the walls. A small, potted plant sat by the window.
"Coffee?"
"For you, thank you, Marisol," Ms. Patel said, delighted. She added sugar and stirred. Marisol handed her the special sugar packet envelope and watched as Ms. Patel unfolded it to reveal the USB. "What's this?" she asked in a low voice. "Just a note I found misplaced," Marisol said softly. "It looked like it belonged to you." Ms. Patel looked at her uncertainly, but slipped the USB into her pocket. "Thanks," she said with a curious smile. Marisol nodded and moved on, slipping out without a sound. Each delivery earned her a small moment of connection. Each envelope was a seed planted in fertile ground. Her next stop was risk management. Mr. Alvarez was tough and careful. He would guard this information closely. His office had thick walls and a locked file cabinet. But Marisol only needed to get him to tuck the USB drive into his computer. He would be compelled to examine it later. She knocked on his door. He peered out, surprised. "Marisol? Coffee already?" "Yes, sir," she said. "Just thought you might like a fresh cup." She wheeled the cart inside. Office smelled of leather and old books. She poured his coffee, then placed the envelope by his keyboard. "Enjoy," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "What's this?" he asked, holding the envelope. Mayer smiled and shrugged innocently. "Guess it came with the delivery." Opened it, read the tiny note, then slipped the USB into his shirt pocket. Marisol left before he could ask more. She paused in the hallway to catch her breath. 3 envelopes delivered, 3 trusted allies seated. She still had time for 2 more stops before 9:30. She checked the small clock on her cart. 9:15. 15 minutes to go. She moved toward the CEO's wing on the 15th floor. The plush carpet was weighty under the cartwheels. The walls featured framed photos of past CEOs and historic milestones. Marisol took one last deep breath. This next stop was the most critical: the CEO's office. The CEO, Mr. Cortland, was known for his guarded nature. He rarely met with anyone without an appointment, but coffee duty had special privileges. A knock, a nod, and she could enter. She stood outside his door, checked the nameplate, then knocked lightly. "Enter," came his smooth voice. She walked in and saw him seated at a grand mahogany desk. He looked up, surprised. "Marisol, you're serving coffee now?" "Yes, sir," she said, placing the cart near his desk, "your usual blend." She handed him a fine china mug. He took it, still studying her face. She lowered her gaze respectfully. He raised the mug. "Thank you." Then he added softly, "What's that envelope?" Marisol paused. This was the moment. She spoke in a low tone. "Just found it mixed." "With the mail, sir? I thought it was yours." She pointed at the envelope. He eyed her, then he blinked and set the mug down. He opened the envelope and pulled out the USB. He inspected it. He murmured. She offered a small smile. "Enjoy." "Your coffee." Without another word, she turned and left. As the door clicked shut, she heard him whispering, "What is this?" Marisol's pulse raced as she wheeled the cart away. She had done it. 5 envelopes delivered, each USB in a key office. Soon, the confidentiality on those drives would reveal the hidden plans of the board, the secret investments, the backroom deals, the undervaluing of diversity and employee welfare. Within hours, the leaks would spread, forcing the board to answer publicly. She had turned coffee service into a stealth operation. She made her way back to the basement stairwell. The corridor was empty and cool. Fluorescent lights hummed. Overhead, she felt a rush of victory, but also caution. Her plan was in motion, but she had to stay calm. If anyone discovered her secret, she could lose everything. Reaching the bottom, she parked the cart in its corner. She downloaded a fresh log from her smartphone and app that pinged each USB's location when plugged in. Her phone screen lit up with green check marks. Marketing, HR, risk, finance, CEO. All 5 confirmed. She allowed herself a small smile. Her first mission was complete. But the work was just beginning. Now she would watch as the information rippled. Through Ardent Global, she would see who stood by her and who turned away. And when the board scrambled, she'd be ready to step forward. Marar packed away the cart supplies and changed back into her own suit from the locker. She tossed the apron and badge into a laundry bin.
Ow.
She smoothed her hair and straightened her jacket. No one would guess that moments ago she had been a barista in the halls. She climbed the stairs to her assistant's cubicle on the 15th floor. Sarah looked up, startled. "Marisol, you're back so soon." "Had a break," Marisol said with a warm smile. "Let's review tomorrow's agenda." Sarah blinked but nodded. Marisol sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and began work as if nothing had happened. But inside, her mind raced with possibilities. Soon, the leaks would hit. The company would shake. And then it would be time for the board to answer for its actions. After 10 minutes of coffee duty, she had shifted the game. Now the empire trembled and Marisol was ready to take her rightful place. The next morning, the city buzzed with news about Ardent Global. Journalists filled the lobby with cameras and microphones. News stations described the leaked documents and secret deals that had gone on behind closed doors. With posts showing screenshots of the USB files and excerpts of board emails, the hashtags #ArdentTruth and #MARISOL wins trended on every platform. In offices around the world, people whispered about the scandal at one of the biggest corporations. Marisol arrived at the building early, as always. She walked through the doors, but something had changed. The lobby, which was usually calm and quiet now, had a restless energy. Security guards held back reporters. Board members hurried past, their faces pale. Even the receptionist seemed nervous, glancing at her computer screen. Marisol paused by the water cooler and filled a glass, her heart steady. She did not feel surprise or fear, only focus. Her plan had worked exactly as she had hoped. Emails from news outlets requested interviews. Investors asked for her comments. A few friends sent messages of support and congratulations, But Marisol knew better than to react. She took a small sip of water and walked toward her office, weaving. Through a crowd of anxious executives, some looked at her with guilt, others with relief. She nodded politely, giving each a calm greeting. "Good morning," she said, her voice clear. In the 15th floor hallway, 2 junior employees hurried past her. One whispered, "She did it," and the other replied, "Now the board is in chaos." Marisol simply smiled and kept going. At her office door, Sarah, her assistant, waited. In the hallway, Sarah's eyes were wide, but she looked relieved. "Marisol," Sarah said quietly, "the press is clamoring for a statement. They want to know what really happened." Marisol placed her hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Thank you," she said. "Let me gather my thoughts first. I'll speak later today." Sarah nodded and slipped away, tapping away on her phone.
Marisol
Unlocked her door and stepped inside. She sat at her desk for a moment, looking out the window at the city below. The rise and fall of buildings felt like the pulse of the world. She felt calm, ready to face what came next. Half an hour later, she received a call from the acting CEO's office. He wanted to meet immediately. The current CEO, Mr. Cortland, who had taken a temporary leave under pressure, offered to restore her title and return her to her old role. He sounded contrite. "Marisol," he said, voice soft, "I want you back. I will publicly apologize for what happened. You deserve your position." Marisol listened without interrupting. She felt a warm satisfaction that her plan had shaken the company's power structure. But she also realized that simply returning to her old job would let the board off easy. She had spoken for real change. Accepting a simple apology would let them continue their shady deals. She needed more. "Thank you for the offer," she said. "I appreciate your apology. But I must think about the best way to move forward. I will speak with the board and with the employees to decide." She stayed firm, without anger or bitterness. She did not close the door, but she did not fully open it either. She asked for time, knowing that the board's confusion would grow if she stayed out of their reach. After hanging up, Marisol called Sarah back into the office. They reviewed messages from board members requesting meetings and phone calls from journalists. They drafted a note to employees inviting them to an open virtual town hall at noon. Marisol believed in transparency. She wanted everyone to hear the truth firsthand. They set up the video link and posted an announcement on the company intranet. The message read, "All employees and stakeholders are invited to join for an honest discussion. Your voices matter." At noon, Marisol sat before her computer in a quiet corner of her office. The screen filled with tiny faces, hundreds of employees logging in from around the globe. She cleared her throat and smiled gently. "Thank you all for joining," she said. "I know many of you have questions. I want to share what happened and where we go from here." She spoke slowly, using simple language. She explained how the board had hidden investments that sent company funds into risky projects benefiting only a few insiders. She described how these actions hurt the company's reputation and the trust of every employee. She did not name names, but she spoke clearly about the need for ethical leadership. She laid out her values: honesty, diversity, and a commitment to every person at Ardent Global. As she talked, questions appeared in the chat window. Employees asked about job security, diversity initiatives, and the company's future direction. Marisol answered each question with patience and detail. When someone asked about restoring her old position, she said, "My role is not the most important thing. Our shared values and our mission matter more. We need to rebuild trust together." Across the screen, viewers nodded and typed messages of support. In break rooms, employees paused their work to watch. In homes, remote workers stood in their living rooms, listening. Shareholders joined as well, asking about financial stability and ethics. Marisol spoke to them too, assuring them that a stronger, fairer company would deliver better results in the long run. By the time the town hall ended, nearly 2 hours had passed. Marisol closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair. She felt a sense of lightness. People had listened, had seen her honesty, they believed in her. Her phone buzzed with messages. From board members, some apologizing, some angry, but many came from investors praising her courage. A few offered support and asked how they could help. She replied briefly, "Stand with us. Demand transparency." Later that afternoon, the board chair, Mr. Delaney, called an emergency meeting. In a glass-walled conference room, he stood at the head of the table. Half the members wore tired expressions. The others looked uncertain. One by one, new voices echoed Marisol's words. A few board members admitted guilt. Others asked for forgiveness. Mr. Delaney wrote a formal statement acknowledging mistakes and pledging reforms. He proposed a new board structure with more diverse leadership and outside oversight. He offered Marisol a vote of confidence to lead the company through the changes. When it came time to vote, the silence was heavy. Then, one by one, hands raised. In support of Marisol's plan, even some who had once opposed her now nodded in quiet agreement. The vote passed by a strong majority. Marisol, though not present, had won the trust of the board and of employees everywhere. Her vision of a transparent, inclusive future would guide Ardent Global. News outlets ran follow-up stories. Ardent Global Board embraces new diversity plan. Senior VP leads ethical revolution. Coffee cart hero bars secret deals. The world watched as Marisol's story inspired other companies to review their own practices. Leaders in other industries reached out to ask for advice. Conferences invited her to speak. A new chapter in business ethics had begun. That evening, Marisol closed her laptop and left the building. The sky glowed pink as the sun set. She passed the lobby where the cameras had been. Now, only the cleaning staff moved quietly among the chairs. She walked to her car, feeling a mix of relief and excitement. Tomorrow, the real work would start. It would be new challenges, drafting policies, hiring diverse talent, rebuilding trust with partners. But she was ready. As she drove home, Marisol thought back to that moment in the basement when she first tied on the gray apron. The time it had felt like a blow. Now she realized it was a turning point. In those 10 minutes of coffee runs, she had rallied her allies and exposed the truth. She had turned a demotion into a movement. And now, as the new leader in all but name, she looked forward to building Ardent Global into a company that reflected its people and its values. She parked in her driveway and stepped out of the car. Twilight air was cool. She walked up to her front door, her mind racing with ideas for the next day. But for a moment, she paused and allowed herself to smile. She had faced the board. She had spoken truth to power, and she had triumphed. The empire trembled under her footsteps and, now it would stand tall under her vision. Marisol arrived at Ardent Global's boardroom early. She paused at the glass door and took a steady breath. Inside, the long table gleamed under bright lights. 20 board members sat around, their papers and tablets spread before them. Faces wore lines of worry. Others looked guarded. The air felt heavy as she walked in, dressed in her sharp suit, her hair neat. She nodded politely, then set her bag down in a chair at the far end. She did not carry the coffee cart this time. Mr. Delaney, the board chair, cleared his throat. He offered a small smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," he said. His voice was calm, but there was tension in the room. As you know, recent events have shaken our company's reputation. You're here to address leadership and next steps. Marisol sat up straight. Every eye turned to her. She raised her hand slightly. "If I may," she said in a clear, friendly tone, "I believe we need a new path forward. One that is rooted in trust, fairness, and strong financial health." She stood and moved into the center of the room. Her heart beat fast, but her voice did not waver. She began by reminding them of the facts. "We saw that secret deals hurt our share price and our brand. We lost trust inside this company and out. Now investors, employees, and partners all wonder what will happen next." She paused and looked around. The board members listened quietly. Some nodded, crossed their arms. She clicked a small remote, and on a screen behind her appeared a slide that read "Vision for Renewal." The slide showed bullet points: transparent leadership, diverse representation, sustainable growth, and ethical governance. She spoke to each point, using simple, strong words. Transparent. Leadership means sharing decisions openly. We will publish quarterly reports on major projects and executive pay. We will hold listening sessions with employees and investors. She clicked again. Next slide. Images of people from different backgrounds working together. Diverse representation means bringing new voices to the table. We will add 2 seats on this board for outside experts, one chosen by employee vote, one chosen by an independent advisory group. That will help us avoid the blind spots that cost us so much. She moved to the next. Charts showed steady revenue growth projections. Sustainable growth means we invest in projects that match our core strengths. No more secret side deals. We will conduct a public review of all major investments over $10 million. We will seek feedback and board approval before moving forward. Finally, a slide about ethics. Simple image. 2 hands shaking. Ethical governance means a new code of conduct. Every board member and senior executive will sign it. Violations will lead to immediate review and, if needed, removal. We must show the world we hold ourselves to the highest standard. She spoke. Some faces softened. Others still looked skeptical. But she did not rush. She answered their questions calmly. When one director asked how they could be sure the process would work, she suggested setting up an oversight committee with rotating membership. When another worried about delays in decision-making, she explained how clear rules would speed up approvals by removing doubt. After 20 minutes of questions and answers, the room grew quiet. Marisol stepped back and let Mr. Delaney take the floor. He looked around, meeting each gaze. "Thank you, Marisol, for that thorough plan," he said. "You have shown us a clear, fair way forward. Now, we must decide who will lead this effort." Marisol stood with her hands at her side. She felt her cheeks flush with both pride and nerves. Watched board members confer in low voices, flipping through her proposal slides on their tablets. Some whispered, others tapped notes. At last, Mr. Delaney called for a vote. He said, "All those in favor of appointing Marisol Thompson as interim CEO, please raise your hand." Marisol looked around. Hands lifted one by one. First a few, then more, until every hand was up. She felt a surge of relief and joy. Mr. Delaney turned to her. "Congratulations," he said with a slight bow. "You are now interim chief executive officer of Ardent Global." Applause broke out around the table. Marisol's chest swelled. She offered a warm smile and bowed her head in gratitude. She sat at the head of the table, replacing Mr. Delaney. Instantly, she felt the weight of her new role press on her shoulders. But more than weight, she felt a spark of purpose. Mr. Delaney handed her a small gavel. "You may call this meeting adjourned," he said. She rapped the gavel lightly. The sound echoed. Cameras from the lobby peered through a glass wall. Press team waited beyond. News crews would record her first words as interim CEO in moments. Marisol stood. She said, "Thank you, everyone, for your trust. I know this is a big responsibility. I am honored. Together we will rebuild Ardent Global's stronger, fairer, and more successful than ever." Her voice sounded steady and clear. She paused, then added with a small laugh, "And yes, I promise never to ask anyone to serve me coffee again." Laughter rippled around the room. Even Mr. Delaney smiled genuinely. The tension had lifted. In that moment, she felt unity across the table. Security. Doors slid open behind her. Cameras and microphones flooded in. Porters scrambled to find space. Lights snapped on. Marisol welcomed them with open hands. She answered their first questions. "My priority is to restore trust and protect our people and our investors." Stock analysts asked how quickly she would implement her plan. She replied simply, "We start now." After 10 minutes of interviews, the press team retreated. Marisol turned back to the board members. "Let's have our first working session," she said. "I want to set up the oversight committee today." The board adjusted their chairs and opened laptops. Some directors looked hopeful. Others looked cautious but open. They began to outline next steps, assign roles, and set deadlines. At 3 o'clock p.m., the meeting ended. Marisol walked out of the boardroom carrying her bag. The corridor buzzed with news crews still filming outside the glass wall. She paused and checked her phone. Messages poured in. Congratulations. Well done. We stand with you. She walked back to her old office on the 15th floor. The door now bore a new plaque. Interim CEO Marisol Thompson. She opened it and stepped inside. The space looked different now. The plain desk held fresh flowers and a small sign that said, "Welcome, CEO." Her assistant Sarah stood by, smiling broadly. "Congratulations," Sarah said softly. Mara set her bag down. "Thank you," she said. She took off her jacket and let the room's warmth settle over her. She opened her laptop and saw dozens of meeting invitations for committees, press calls, and strategy sessions. She leaned back and closed her eyes for a moment. She thought back to the morning when she donned the gray apron and served coffee in secret. That simple act had begun a revolution. Now, she was at the helm of the entire company. She felt a mix of pride and responsibility. She knew challenges lay ahead. Implementing her reforms, rebuilding trust with partners, and steering the company back to strong performance. But she also knew she had surrounded herself with allies, those executives. She had seated with evidence board members who had voted for her, and employees worldwide who believed in her vision. She opened her eyes. The clock read 3:15. She stood and walked to the window. The city spread out below, the sun already dipping toward evening. She let the moment sink in. This was her city now, her company, her chance to make a real difference. Her phone buzzed. Again, a news alert announced the stock price jump since the board vote. Another said Ardent Global leaps under new CEO. Message from Mr. Nguyen appeared. Let's start planning the diversity town hall. One from Ms. Patel. I have survey results ready. One from Mr. Alvarez. Risk team is on standby. She smiled and tapped her phone. Meeting in 5. Let's turn words into action. She grabbed her jacket, slung her bag over her shoulder, and strode out of the office. She headed down the hall to the small conference room where her leadership team waited. The door read Executive Briefing. As she entered, everyone stood. She nodded and sat at the head. Thank you for coming, she said. We have work to do. Let's begin. The room filled with energy as they reviewed timelines, set up committees, and delegated tasks. Marisol listened, guided, and offered input. She inspired confidence. She made notes. She wrapped up the meeting with a clear call. Let's make history. When the meeting ended, Marisol walked back to her office. The sun was low now, painting. The sky orange. She leaned against her desk and allowed herself a quiet moment of satisfaction. She had turned a demotion into domination. Coffee runs into boardroom victories. Now, she led a billion-dollar empire with a promise of ethics and growth. She picked up a framed photo from her desk, a picture of her with her family on a summer day. Smiles bright, she touched the glass. She remembered their pride when she first became senior VP. Soon, they would hear the news. She was now CEO. She imagined her mother's tears of joy. Her father's proud nod, Mayor, set the photo back and turned to the window again. The city lights blinked on, one by one. She whispered to herself, this is only the beginning. Then she stepped away from the window, squared her shoulders, and walked out of the office to face the next chapter of her life and the future of Ardent Global. Marisol woke early, before sunrise. She dressed in a simple blouse and dark skirt, taking care to look confident but not showy. She packed her bag with notes and a fresh pen. Today was the day she would lead the first full shareholders meeting. As CEO, it felt strange to think back to the morning she served coffee in an apron. Now she was the leader of a billion-dollar company. She took a deep breath and stepped into the quiet corridor of Ardent Global's headquarters. The morning light filtered through the tall windows in the lobby. Marisol walked across the polished floors, her shoes clicking softly. She passed security, who greeted her with nods and smiles. Even the guard at the desk seemed to stand a bit straighter. She felt a surge of pride. Inside her, she carried the memory of struggles and smaller victories. But today was about celebrating the company's new direction and the teamwork that brought them here. Up in the 15th floor boardroom, chairs waited around a long table. Simple floral arrangement sat at its center. On the wall, a large screen displayed the Ardent Global logo and the words Annual Shareholders Meeting. Marisol arrived early to review her presentation. She glanced at messages on her laptop, confirmations of attendance from major investors, notes from the Diversity Advisory Council, and a summary of quarterly results showing a sharp rise in revenue and a steady improvement in employee engagement scores. She glanced at a framed photograph. On the table beside her notes a picture of her parents taken years ago at her college graduation. She remembered their cheers that day, how she imagined them here in spirit, sharing in her success. She touched the frame and whispered, "We did this together." Then she straightened her papers and waited. One by one, shareholders arrived. A woman in a tailored suit greeted Marisol and shook her hand firmly. A man with silvery hair sat down and offered a warm smile. Small groups chatted about the company's recent turnaround. Gone were the whispers of scandal. Now people spoke of Ardent Global as a model of good governance. Employees streamed in as well, invited to observe the meeting. They took seats quietly, their faces bright with hope. At 10 o'clock sharp, Marisol stood at the head of the table. The chairman, Mr. Delaney, stood beside her and tapped a small bell. The room fell silent. Both of them nodded to the room. Marisol stepped to the side and let him speak. "Good morning," he began. His voice held sincerity. "Welcome to Ardent Global's first meeting under the leadership of Marisol Thompson. I am honored to present her as our Chief Executive Officer." He paused, then sat. Marisol felt a wave of applause. It was not loud, but it was genuine and warm. She moved to the podium and smiled at the room. "Thank you, Mr. Delaney, and thank you all for being here," she said in a clear, steady voice. "When I first joined this company 10 years ago, I dreamed of leading it to success. Today I stand before you full of gratitude for the trust you have placed in me and for the hard work of every person at Ardent Global." She spoke of the journey, the scandal of secret deals, the painful but necessary exposure, the board vote, and the reforms they enacted together. She described the new policies: transparent reporting, diverse board membership, ethical governance, and sustained investment in core strengths. She shared how employee surveys showed record satisfaction and how new partnerships had formed because of the company's renewed integrity. Her presentation moved smoothly from one slide to the next. Charts showed steady growth. Photos on the screen captured moments: employees volunteering in community projects, new research labs, the scholarship launch. Each image reminded the audience of the company's broader purpose beyond profits. When she finished the formal report, she opened the floor for questions. Hands rose. A shareholder asked about return on investment. She answered with data and a promise of cautious expansion. An employee asked about career development programs. Marisol explained the new mentorship initiative that matched senior leaders. With junior staff, a board member asked about the Diversity Council's progress. She spoke proudly of the 2 new advisory seats and the plan to expand internships for underrepresented students. After an hour of questions and answers, Mr. Delaney tapped the bell again. "Thank you, Marisol, and thank you all," he said. "We will now vote on the proposed measures." Brightly colored ballots were handed out. Marisol watched as people marked their choices, approved the new code of conduct, adopted the oversight committee, launched the mentorship program. The ballots were tallied, and the results appeared on the screen. Unanimous support for every measure. A cheer rose in the room. Even Mr. Delaney smiled broadly. Marisol's heart swelled. The company she loved had embraced her vision. She stepped back to the podium. "This is more than a vote," she said. "It is a promise to each other and to the world that Ardent Global stands for integrity, fairness, and growth that benefits everyone." She paused, letting the meaning sink in. "Thank you," she said again, quieter this time. "Let's build this future together." After the meeting, a lunch reception awaited in the atrium. Tables held platters of food, and people gathered in circles, talking and laughing. Marisol moved through the crowd, shaking hands, offering hugs, and taking photos. She greeted the youngest intern she had met, who thanked her for the new scholarship. She spoke with a veteran employee who said he had never felt so proud to work here. She met investors who said they would increase their support because they trusted her leadership. At one corner, a group of board members waited. Mr. Delaney approached her. "Excellent work," he said quietly. "You have united us when unity seemed impossible." He held out his hand. She shook it firmly. "Thank you," she said. "I could not have done it without your faith." They smiled at each other. In that moment, she felt genuine partnership. Later, she found Sarah standing near the buffet. Sarah's face glowed. "You did it," she said simply. Marisol grinned and hugged her assistant. "We did it," she replied. "Thank you for everything." Sarah blushed and said, "It was an honor." As the reception wound down, the atrium emptied. Marisol helped pack away leftover food and collected the remaining ballots to be shredded securely. She walked across the atrium floor, looking at the empty tables and chairs. She felt a light tiredness in her legs, but joy in her heart. Back in her office, she opened her laptop and checked the company's share price. It was up significantly. She drafted a short message to all employees. "Thank you for your trust. Today we took a big step forward. Tomorrow, we continue building." She hit send and leaned back. Outside, dusk settled. City lights twinkled. Marisol stood at the window, hands folded, watching the world below. She thought back to that morning when she first tied on an apron and stepped into that basement hallway. If someone had told her then that she would lead this company with such unity and success, she might not have believed it. Yet here she was. She whispered to herself, "This is the power of integrity and teamwork." She closed her eyes for a moment. She felt gratitude for her allies, Mr. Nguyen, Miss Patel, Mr. Alvarez, and others who had joined her cause. She remembered the hush in the elevator, the nervous smiles, and the growing momentum. She remembered her parents cheering at her graduation. And she imagined